Good evening, everybody. Stephen Howson, and this is my post-match review of West Brom 1, Manchester United 0 at the Hawthorns. I thought in the first half we didn't really have a clue what was going on. Once Matta went off, while Matta was on the pitch, I didn't think we looked like we had any idea what was going on in the first place anyway. But I thought at the start of the second half, we had 15-20 minutes where we looked to sort of... We was conservative when we was attacking in terms of numbers, but we was putting fast balls that was going right through the thirds, right to the attacking outlets, and we actually looked good. We actually looked like we had space in that final third, and Rashford and Martial looked like they was going to do something. Ultimately they didn't, and ultimately they ended up scoring right around that time that it all started to switch over. We knew that he was going to do it, didn't we? I said in my preview, I felt like they was probably going to go 4-4-2 with us and use the two outlets. It didn't quite go down that same way because they didn't really have the outlets to do it. They actually pressed from the middle and they just closed us down. And I said it's easy to shut down that midfield two. It's even easier to shut down that midfield two when you lose one of the outlets, one of the best outlets as well, in Matta. And from there, we just had no idea, didn't we? And do you know what? As much as I dislike him as a footballer, I think it was probably calling out for Fellaini. As much as I want to see Fosu-Mensah given game time, was the substitution for Darmian the most sensible use of our resources on the bench? I don't think so. You're chasing a game. Fellaini is chaos. That's what he brings to a football team. You put Fellaini into the mix, and Blind was pumping balls up, but he's doing them to isolated targets. So you put a ball in for Fellaini, and because he's so much elbows and knees, and he's so big and so clumsy, sometimes things happen on the back of that. So maybe if Fellaini would have been the option, especially chasing the game late in the day, because I don't even remember Fosu-Mensah doing a single thing on the pitch, in all honesty. This is third game now in the first team, 3 different positions, and not one of them has been central midfield, which is where I was hoping. When I saw him warming up, I was like, oh, this might be interesting. Let's see where he goes now. Maybe bring him on for Carrick and give us some energy. And he bring him on at right back. I don't think you can ask the manager to shoulder the blame for the performances of the players today. I understand people's frustration with it, though. But by the same rule, nobody gave the manager the credit for the performances in recent weeks. The two go hand in hand for me. If you're giving the players the credit for the performances in recent weeks and not the manager, then it has been the players that take the can. You can't give all the shit to one guy and none of the praise to one guy. There has to be a balance. And I think there's probably an element of, I didn't think the team selection was good today. Why drop Varela? Varela's that tempo, that energy, and he's finding space down the right hand side and he's putting crosses in. That's dangerous. We've got an outlet there now. Rojo at left back. Don't really recall too many times that Rojo's able to get to the byline and put a cross in. Doesn't happen very often, although defensively he is probably pretty decent. As I said on my full-time Devils review, why we changed a lot of players. We changed Memphis, we changed Varela. The one guy that needed a rest was Daley Blind. He's looked fucked for a couple of weeks now. Why not give Borthwick Jackson another run at left back, play Rojo at centre half? Then you've got 2 centre-halves in Rojo and Smalling. Sweet. And you're not moving players out of position to accommodate anybody. You're playing players in their natural position, and you'll always get a better performance, a more consistent performance with a player in their natural position. You'll always get a player that can come and do well in a job. You know, we've seen John O'Shea go in net and not perform terribly. So, you know, it doesn't mean that he's going to be a world-class keeper. It means that he just managed to concentrate for that one time and was decent at it. There's so many frustrating things that today was the most experienced team in terms of age and appearances that we've put out for a long time, and it was our worst performance. We just got completely ruined in midfield, and that's why I want to see Timothy Fosu-Mensah given a shout. I'm delighted that he's now in and around the first team picture, but you get a different animal, and I mean an animal, when you play Fosu-Mensah in midfield. When was the last time you saw Carrick, Herrera, Schweinsteiger or Schneiderlin charge through the centre of the pitch with the ball at their feet? I don't know if Carrick's ever done it. I don't even think Carrick does it on FIFA. Fosu Mensah, that is one of the things that he does. He just goes with it, and when you're that big, it's never a dribble, is it? It's a charge, and he charges with the ball. I don't know if he's ever going to get the opportunity. Van Gaal obviously sees him as a fullback, so I don't know if he's ever going to get the opportunity as central midfield. It is difficult for young, inexperienced players to take those central positions, but he performs great at centre half. I think the season's like... I mean, it's still very possible that we can finish inside the top four. Very possible, because I think City are as inconsistent and poor as we are at the moment. The only difference is that they've got some star players who, if they decide to turn it on, will blow teams away. We currently don't really have that, and that is the difference. We've got some star players, but they've not turned it on all season. City have turned it on and turned it off at will. So if we had that in our team, I'd have more confidence that we could turn up. The crazy thing is, now that we've got Liverpool twice, West Ham and Manchester City, we could actually go on and get better results in these games going off our previous form against the bigger teams, which is ludicrous, isn't it? That shouldn't happen. We should be looking at the likes of West Brom and Norwich and going, watch this, bosh. And then looking at tough, gritty 1-0, 1-1 sort of games with the likes of Liverpool and City and West Ham, and I have no idea how them games are going to go on. I really don't. Liverpool on Thursday night is going to be interesting, to say the absolute least. Will it define the season? Maybe. Maybe it will. We're still quite far out in terms of the season. Nothing is settled just yet. But in a week and a half's time, we could be out of 2 cups. And by the time we face... Here's the one, right? If City beat us, then top 4's over. So we could be out of both cups and... Not mathematically, but all but out of the top 4 if City beat us. I mean, theoretically, it would only take 2 defeats. We could lose on away goals or penalties in the Europa, lose to West Ham, lose to City. It literally could only be 2 defeats out of these 4 games. 3 defeats, you would assume, would probably finish it completely. Would it mean that the board acts on the manager? I don't think so. I am almost 100% certain that he's here to the death. And I've seen the rumours and that yesterday about Giggs is now the one that's going to be taking over. This just sort of sounds like Fergie's been briefing the press again a little bit to me. It doesn't feel like there's anything in it. I'm pretty certain that... I know Fergie wants him. That's not in doubt. It's what the board's gonna do, I think, and the board, I think, wants to appoint Mourinho, whether that's the right idea or the wrong idea. At least it's an idea. Well, I don't think we've got many ideas about us. So it's hard to get too wound up over one game when you go down to 10 men, but I think the senior players in the team really let us down today. Mata especially, the stupid challenges that you don't get from Juan Mata, who's so out of character for him. Van Gaal came out in his press conference and said the referee should take into account that Mata's lovely, essentially. He didn't say that word, but he should take into account his character, which maybe. But then we're always saying that we used to say that about Rooney, where the referee couldn't wait to book him, or any Scholes tackle resulted in a yellow card because they had a reputation, and it's kind of unfair to have a reputation precede someone on a pitch. A referee should referee what they see, not what someone's character is. So you can't have it not go one way for those who've got a bad reputation, Cantona, Keane, etc., and then someone who's got a good reputation can't just get away with murder because they've got a good reputation. It shouldn't work like that. So I think he's wrong there by saying that. I think both fouls were fouls. You could argue maybe the first wasn't a yellow, or the second wasn't a yellow, but they were both fouls. So what's he doing? This is probably the second most senior player in the side behind Carrick, I think. So he can't do that. It's pure and simple, just can't be doing that sort of thing. So what have we got for the rest of the week? Let's look forward then. So we've got 3 matches this week, so it'll be a busy week for us. I have no idea what my schedule is going to be for the week, but There's a behind closed doors game tomorrow against Oldham at dinner time. I'm not sure the rules of the behind closed doors, despite the fact it's called a behind closed doors game. I don't know if the normal Carrington match rules apply like they do for the 16s and the 18s. So I'm going to try and go down and sneak in and see if I can get a look at what this team is tomorrow, because it might be interesting with it not being on MUTV or anything like that. They might play a fairly strong side in it, so it might be worth checking that out. Might give us a bit of an idea of who's going to be lining up on Thursday as well. Then obviously we've got Liverpool on Thursday, which I have no idea how that's going to go at all. The game tomorrow is the Manchester Senior Cup against Oldham. I don't know if I just said that or not, but that's what it is. It's the Manchester Senior Cup, so we've won it more times than anyone, but obviously there's generally only us and City involved in it, isn't there? So it's hardly the biggest trophy in the world, but we have won it more than anyone. Friday, the under-18s, we've got Brighton at Altrincham. I'm going to go check that one out. I don't know, man. What are we to do with our club? When everything feels like it's going right, you just get a kick in the bollocks, don't you? And that was a real kick in the bollocks, that I think, today. The talk of this director of football coming from Atletico doesn't seem to be going away. I covered it in Daily for Full-Time Devils earlier in the week, that Damasio reckons there's a 60% chance that it's coming, and I really hope he does come, in all honesty, because I think that's the direction, and by the sounds of it, he is involved in shaping squads, signing and scouting, and if he's in any way, shape or form involved in the scouting and signing, then you have to just look at the track record that Atletico have got with strikers and go, Jesus, that alone is worth whatever he wants in terms of a salary package. Pay the man. The whole talk is that it's him and Mourinho coming in the summer, and obviously with all the other plans that we're hearing in terms of the academy, with the 5-year plan, a new technical director, the stadium, and all the rest of it. I mean, it should be fairly positive. It just feels like this season has just been such a waste, because it was actually there for the taking, wasn't it? It really was there for the taking, and we've just not taken it. We've had so many opportunities, like Arsenal leaving the door open for us, City leaving the door open for us. I mean, I watched the Arsenal and Spurs second half. I didn't see the first half, but Spurs looked up for it, and Arsenal was so lucky to come away with a point. And you just think, Spurs, they've come from relatively nowhere. They've sort of just milled around, and now they find themselves in a title challenge. I still think Leicester are going to do it. I mean, and their story is even more remarkable, isn't it? Where they've come from, almost relegation. This season is absolutely mental, and it must be frustrating for so many more clubs than ourselves. Aston Villa, they should not be in the position they're in, and they're so far adrift. They are so gone. Chelsea, how that team can go from winning the league at a canter to just almost refusing to turn up and work, is what it seems like, is mind-boggling. I actually can't even figure it out, how they transformed from being champions to so poor. Can't figure it out. There's some teams that have excelled. Stoke look like they're doing well. West Ham have turned it on, and I think a lot of that's down to Payet. Obviously, Mahrez and Vardy have smashed it at the top of the league. Such an interesting Premier League season. I don't know what it's going to mean for Europe next year. Obviously, the competition that United are going to be in, we have no idea. Will it affect us signing anybody in the summer? You'd have to say no. I think if Mourinho's coming, I think he'll probably have people that want to come and play for him, and he'll be probably working on that right now. We also have the money to blow anybody out of the water, and the thing is, as well, Tottenham attracted a lot of people and a lot of good players without the Laura Champions League. We did it ourselves. No, we couldn't have predicted how poor Di Maria and Falcao was going to be. I mean, the day that they signed, we was almost doing laps of the street. It was that excited when they signed. We thought, this is it. And they both turned out to be rubbish, but we still attracted those players with no Champions League. So, if we can do that, then I'm pretty confident, especially with Mourinho. I'm 99% sure he's coming. If it's not, and it is Giggs, I'm sure Giggs is able to attract. It's whether or not it's the right idea, I don't know, and I do have my doubts about it. But I'm sure we'll be able to attract players. I just think there's so much deadwood, and I do think one of Louis van Gaal's jobs was getting rid of a lot of the deadwood. If you look at the squad photo from 2013 and you look at the squad photo today, you'll see the difference in it. And you look at the average age of our squad. In a couple of years, something's going to click and we're going to be awesome. And whoever is in charge is going to be the one taking all the credit for it. And I think the credit for it has to lie a little bit with Lou Van Gaal. And it's got to lie quite heavily with Warren Joyce and also quite heavily with Paul McGuinness for the way they prepared these players. And it also has to lie a little bit with the scouting network for identifying Timothy Fosu-Mensah and whoever is working doing that director of football role or director of academy role to sign these young players, because we have been busy recently signing a ton of 15, 16, 17-year-old players who are A-listers. Now, I believe it's club policy that they're looking for the absolute best local Mancunian, Greater Manchester English talent from 6, 7, 8 years old. And then A-star foreign talent of the likes of Andreas Pereira, Januzaj, Fosu-Mensah, etc. I mean, Memphis possibly fits into that bracket, although he was already a first-team player for PSG. Possibly Martial fits into that category, or already a first-team player, but that's the sort of player that, let's face it, that's the sort of player that Manchester United traditionally do sign and make into world-class players. We only have to look at the Busby Babes to see that that was probably the 50s and 60s equivalent of what's happening now with George Best. George Best with Belfast Boy. That's about as far as you're probably going to get to travel in 1961, isn't it? Bobby Charlton's from the North East, Duncan Edwards from the Midlands. So they don't have to all be grown up on Wythenshawe Estate. They don't all have to come from Collyhurst. They don't all have to have gone to school in Moss Side. These are lads that are brought in and trained in the Man United ways and traditions and fed into the first team. Then you're a United Academy player for me. Paul Pogba's arguably the same. We bought him at 15 years old from Le Havre. We educated him, we bring him in, we develop him, and maybe most of the groundwork is done elsewhere, but you're not going to have, in modern football, you're not going to have many. They will exist, but you're not going to have many players who haven't been at clubs, because there's so much emphasis on scouting at the moment, especially in Manchester. It's kind of sickening how many players City get onto their books. They literally have a profile and a database on every kid who can kick a ball and stand up straight from the age of 6 in Manchester. Every single kid has their name taken, and I think probably 20%, you're looking at the top 20%, have gone on trials or done X number of weeks on trial with City, because they've got satellite centres all over the place and they're just bringing busloads of kids in looking for that diamond in the rough. United do it a little bit different, and United probably need to revamp our ways a little bit, but United are doing it with more meticulous scouting. United, the lads that I coach, United might come and take a name, and then 2 months later come and take a name again, and if it's the same name, maybe that gets flagged up in a database somewhere. But United are a lot more picky and a lot more aloof. City will be like, give me the names of them 7, and then them 7 might disappear for trial, and then them 7 come back because none of them was good enough. United seem to be a lot more meticulous. United aren't looking for a team. United are looking for that one superstar, I think, at each age group. Because even if you can bring through one at each age group, that far outstrips what everybody else is capable of doing. And from what I hear, United have got a lot of superstars at each age group. I mean, and we're not talking like they literally only bring one through. They're still bringing through 20, 24 kids. But those are the 1% of the 1% kids. We're not talking about decent kids. Obviously, a lot of you know about my son Jaden. My son Jaden's a pretty good footballer. If he was born in Newcastle or Southampton, he'd probably be in an academy because he's of that level. He spent several months with City and was released because he was too small. He's got an excellent touch, excellent vision, but he's not the quickest. The gift and the curse of living in and growing up in Manchester is that Manchester has got such a high bar. The East Manchester Junior Football League is a phenomenal league. All played on 3G, seriously competitive. The level of talent is ridiculous. And there's as many scouts as there is parents watching under 7s, under 8s, under 9s, under 10s, under 12s. And all of these kids are getting watched, they're getting noticed. And there's just, it's a gift and a curse because the level's so high that if you do have the ability to meet that level, then there's every chance that you're going to have half a decent career in football potentially, or certainly a lot higher percentage chance of having that career in football than, say, a kid of equal ability that's grown up in Carlisle or Norwich or Plymouth or somewhere that's not as populated, not as dense, and obviously the 45-minute rule with the FA and all the rest of it. So, like Liverpool, Everton, Manchester United, Manchester City, Blackburn, Burnley, Oldham, all of these teams are all looking at all these kids constantly all the time. And I think United's policy of being a bit choosy with them is fine. There is no right answer with this. Maybe it's City's trawling, bringing in 1,000 kids, keeping hold of 100 of them, and eventually producing one for the first team. It's better than they have been doing, but it leaves a lot of wastage and it leaves a lot of kids disillusioned in their wake. And then we have the whole other topic of how about competitive football, where I see some people's argument that you don't produce winners by having non-competitive leagues, and I agree with that. No one's ever been cotton wool wrapped their entire life and suddenly become Muhammad Ali. I think adversity breeds champions. And as a parent, obviously it's hard to know where the balance is between how hard do you push somebody to make them succeed, not necessarily in football, but in academic life and everything. And how much of an easy ride do you want your children to have? I think the FA's got a decent balance with it at the moment, that it is competitive. The kids treat it as competitive, but they don't publish the league fixtures anywhere, the league tables or league results anywhere, and I think that's fine. But I think at academy levels, there should be the element of competitiveness, because let's strip it down. What are we actually doing when we sign an academy player? We're saying we think you're basically an apprentice professional footballer, aren't you? Even at 9, 10 years old. That's what we're looking at you as. 10 years time, we're hoping that you're going to be knocking on the door of the first team of our club. So I think academy level, they should have that competitive nature, because that is the elite. Now, if you just want to play football on a Saturday with your friends and have a good time, sorted. And I think that's perfectly fine, and I think that's a completely acceptable, reasonable, rational way to get kids into exercise, to have fun with the friends, to build friendships and stuff like that. Everyone's friends with everyone that they grew up playing sport with. Some people still, into their 30s, friends with people that they might have played sport with at 7, 8, 9 years old. And I think that's excellent. And I love that social aspect of it. And I've got no issues with that being non-competitive, or certainly not as competitive as publishing leagues and people getting all excited on the sidelines and cheating a bit and all the rest of all of the nasty things that come with being over competitive and that sort of stuff. But at academy level, we're talking about the absolute elite, and I think you have to push them kids, and I think them kids need to be tough loved a little bit. And I've gone on a massive tangent here that I don't really know what the fuck I'm going on about, as usual, but you get what I'm saying, don't you? So that's my week for next week. That's the game covered. I did an MLS preview today, just because the timing was right, really. I wanted to do the MLS. I think I mentioned this on a video a bit ago. I wanted to do MLS and some of the major European leagues, but it didn't feel right just kicking in the middle of a European league. So the timing of the MLS league starting was perfect, and I think it suits nicely to start waffling shit about the MLS. I think it's really interesting what's happening over there, and I do think that in years to come, we are going to look at the MLS and the American League, and I think a lot of it's to do with immigration in America. Obviously, there's European immigration, South American immigration in the States. It's probably leading the way a little bit with the soccer revolution, but I think also the brain damage issues with American football is also leading to a lot of people wanting their kids to play soccer when they're growing up. And it's the number one participation sport between a certain age group. I can't remember the age group off the top of my head. It's something like 12 to 14 or 11 to 15 or something along those lines. It might be 12 to 16, something. But it's the most participated sport, and lads do it, chicks do it. The women's national team's smashing it over there. The men's national team's not really they're hardly a joke, are they? Americans obviously really nationalistic in their sports and they get behind it. Not as cynical as us British. Or fucking hate the England national team, don't we? They're getting behind it, and the college system over there in America, they put so much money into it that I think it's going to be a success, and I think there's a real danger that it might overtake English football, or certainly English football production. The league at the moment, I've been discussing with a couple of mates recently what level I think the MLS is truly at. And some say League One, some say Championship, and I think Championship's probably, I think middle to lower Championship's probably fair, I think, in terms of technical ability and this, that and the other. The Championship's a massively competitive league, obviously with a broad spectrum of abilities in there. And there's going to be the occasional superstar that comes in there. They've obviously got a lot of money for certain elements of their roster and the salary cap and all the way. I will do a video explaining that because that's quite in-depth and quite complicated. But I think the way their college system works in terms of the funding and the scholarships and the full-time coaches, and I know of some clubs that's over in the States that have got 25 and 30,000 children on their books from like age under 9s to under 21s, and they're all paying a shitload more than we pay for subs, and those subs are subsidising stadiums, they're subsidising full-time professional coaches, and I think that's the difference between what we're seeing in English leagues and what we're seeing over in the States. Now, it's a cultural thing in England, and I think a lot of our best children are those raw street kids, the Wayne Rooneys, the Ross Barkleys, and the Wilf Zahas, players that just love the game, and they're going to practice and develop those skills in the streets the very same way as Brazil. The Brazilians don't have an elite player performance pathway, do they? The kids are brought up in the favelas and they're playing football in the streets, and that's where people are developing these skills from. And obviously, as long as you've got the facilities there for them to join teams and play football, which they still do have, despite being piss poor in Brazil and Argentina and places like that, then you will develop world-class players somehow. I mean, even Cristiano Ronaldo was broke as a kid, and it was only once he joined, I don't think it was Sporting, I think it might have been a club before Sporting, that he got some new boots. I think all his boots was hand-me-downs or something like that. So this is something that you see all across Europe. A lot of the best players come from extreme poverty. But there's also the athlete building, which I think is huge in America. We see, I actually really enjoy watching the NFL Combine because I think it's amazing how much emphasis American sports put on stats and physical performance, especially the Combine. The Combine is all number based, and I think they sometimes go a bit too far on the stats, but I think the way they use the stats certainly is a good thing, especially in the scientific areas of the sport. I think it took a while for the academy model to migrate over to America, where they realise that they can grow their own. And I think it's the lack of transfer fees over there and the lottery of the draft. I think if they're allowed to grow their own players organically, a lot of clubs are going to find that they're able to do so. And I think from what I'm hearing, Dallas is doing it to great success. So I'm watching those quite closely to see how they do it, because Dallas is one of those clubs with 25 to 30,000 youth players on their books. And with the facilities that they've got and the athletic ability that they've got at their disposal with some of the athletes in America. I mean, I played against Americans when I was a kid, and they were 6'4" at 13 and 14. They was huge. And a lot of my friends that have played football and that against them, they're saying the same things. When you played against American, if you play in the Dallas Cup and things like that, you come up against these absolute monsters who were supposedly 12, 13, 14 years old. So I think that they'll have a lot of athletes that they're open to, and it's whether they've got the skill and the tactical level, which will come. I'm sure it'll come, because money talks at the end of the day, and coaches are going to be willing to go out there, and scouts will be willing to go out there, and you'll find technical directors because they've got budget to spend and the thirst for the game, and it does seem to be growing nationally. in terms of attendances, in terms of the cable TV audiences, in terms of all that sort of stuff. It's huge for the game. And I think a real problem that we have in England, and it's a political thing more than anything else, is that sports are looked down upon and derided in our schools. And we praise academic performance and we don't praise athletic performance as it's the same way. We praise academic talent, but not athletic talent, and we actually discourage it by giving a certificate for participation, which fucking kills any hunger and desire in someone. I've seen it with the kids that I coach. They do not give a shit about participation awards. What is the point? They want to win stuff. And unfortunately, we have that with the competitive league tables for grades in academia, but not our sport. And I do envy the way America and Australia treat their sport and their athletes. And I do wish... I wish that one of the legacies of having the Olympics in this country was that we actually put some effort into sport, in trying to talent identify for different sports. And one thing that I really enjoyed about being in the army was that it opened my eyes to a ton of different sports. I thought I had the photograph in here. I don't have the photograph in here. I competed in the Army Biathlon Championships in Austria and Germany and France and Norway. And I'd never skied in my life before I went. I spent 5-6 weeks training in Norway, how to do it, and then we come home for Christmas, and then we spent 10 weeks away skiing competitively, skiing and shooting all around Europe, and it was fucking brilliant. And while I was there, I met the guy that was in charge of the Army, what's it called? Bobsled team. And he was telling me how they picked the team, and he's like, yeah, we just get 4 sprinters, and then we do, boom. And I was like, oh, and the Army bobsled team is basically the Great Britain Winter Olympics bobsled team, because who's doing bobsled? I've never seen a bobsled track in Manchester in my entire life. I've never seen one in England. So where would you go? If I was a 10-year-old lad and I was like, do you know what, bobsled is the thing for me, where would I go? And that's one thing that I did really enjoy about my time in the forces, that it opened your eyes to all sorts of different sport. And I did everything. I did kayaking, I did orienteering, I played rugby, I played football, I did skiing, I did snowboarding. I do it all. Surfing. I'd never tried surfing until I was in the army, and I loved it. And I think that's one thing that we don't get. Why don't schools put any sort of emphasis on just teaching all these crazy skills? All the time that I was at school, we played football, and then we played cricket. And occasionally in the middle, we played rugby. And my school was very good at rugby. We had a lot of really talented rugby players. And even then, they reluctantly allowed us to play rugby. So there you go. We've gone from West Brom review to political rant with American MLS and whatever else was in the middle. Academy. Bullshit. Whatever. There's a crap. There we go. 30 odd minutes. I think that'll fucking do, won't it? Anyway, so Football Manager went out in the morning. Salford City. Depending on what the crack is with whether I can get into this behind closed doors game at Carrington. If not, it'll be delayed and I'll do it in the afternoon. I think I'm on daily on Tuesday for Full Time Devils, and there'll be a youth review for MUFC Latest on Tuesday also. We've not spoke about Conor McGregor, have we? Shall we? Nah, fuck it, we'll do that another day. Thanks for watching. Drop us a like. Hit me up, subscribe if you like listening to 35-minute rants. Stick anything you want in the comments. We'll get a discussion going about it throughout the week. Nice one. Laters.